Hi there, and thank you for joining us on the Overcomers Overcoming podcast. We feature those who are in the process of overcoming or have overcome any type of life encounter, life obstacle that at the time seemed to be almost insurmountable. With this podcast, we have three objectives in mind. Our first objective is we want you to know with a confident resolve you are not alone. We want to work with you. We want you to know there are others who are working with you, who want to help you through whatever you are encountering, and together we will get through whatever you're experiencing.
Our second objective is there are multiple options for any life encounter you are facing. We want to help you develop a resolve that there are various options and solutions to any life dilemma.
Our third objective is to help you with critical thinking skills. If you're encountering something that was possibly a decision you made sometime in the past, and if you had the opportunity for a life redo, you would make a different decision. We want to help you with those critical thinking skills that can help you make an informed decision and not encounter what you're going through at the moment. We are the Cooper Culture, a veteran-owned business. We work with business personnel and families to develop and sustain connected relationship cultures within their families and organizations. That type organization is one where people feel wanted, appreciated, and genuinely a part of that organization. I'm with my wife and business partner, Marty, who has helped me facilitate this podcast. Today we feature Dr. Jeffrey Reynolds, who discusses with us the difference between physical fitness and health. Very interesting that he makes this analogy, but he does so because of his experience with physical fitness. He is an avid runner. As of this recording, has run over 140.6 miles. By many standards, is very physically fit. Yet he got a diagnosis of cancer, and two different diagnoses of cancer, which radically changed his life. He talks to us about how he and anyone with a serious diagnosis can overcome whatever that diagnosis is, not just medical, but whatever the challenge is a person has, how they can get beyond that to overcome whatever it is, whatever the life encounter is they are enduring. Marty, what are some takeaways our listeners can gain from Dr. Jeffrey?
Dr. Jeffrey has a life story that is amazing. He shares regarding his two cancer times that he was determined to have an unwavering discipline to exercise. Even on the hardest days when progress felt small, he could also feel those small victories and helped him to get through and keep going.
That unwavering discipline, that is a call to action that many of us need to have. Let's listen and learn together. Yeah, it's a great story. Dr. Reynolds, great to have you with us. Our listeners are going to be very interested in learning how you can, one, run in excess of 140 miles, compete in and complete a triathlon, how all of that might correlate with overcoming two cancer diagnoses. I do know that some people might feel that, cancer, I don't know how I can make it beyond that point, but you seem to have a mindset that of something to the effect, I will beat this, I'll overcome it, I'll do whatever is required to be a better person in spite of cancer and so forth. Dr. Reynolds, great to have you with us.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's a pleasure, and anxious to tell the story. As you mentioned, I went into this as a triathlete. My story really began on April 1st of 2022, appropriately enough, April Fool's Day. I'm driving down the highway going to a dental appointment. I get a notification on my phone. I get to a stoplight, and I jump into my healthcare portal and I scroll through pages of medical jargon that I don't understand too well. And then I get to the punchline, and the punchline is very simply clinically significant prostate cancer likely. And I sat at the stoplight, cars beeping behind me, just trying to make sense of it all and thinking maybe they mixed my records up. Maybe this is a bad April Fool's joke. I can't believe that, I've just gotten this news via a text message, no less, on a Friday morning. And, to be fair, my cancer journey didn't start with that text message. It started with a routine exam. I went in for a routine check, regular physical, was feeling great. And in fact, just a couple of months earlier, I had finished Ironman Florida, which for your audience that may not be familiar with it, that involves a 2.4-mile open water swim, a 112-mile bike ride, and a full 26.2-mile marathon that you run. And you don't take breaks in between, and you need to finish within 17 hours. And so I did that as part of maybe a midlife crisis in retrospect, but was able to look back and say, geez, how could I have had cancer? I just did this incredible feat and I'm in the best shape of my life. But I did. I had no symptoms whatsoever. I went in for this routine exam. And then on that day, heard those words for the first time. And they're words that 2 million Americans hear each and every year. You have cancer. And so that was the beginning of my journey. As you mentioned, I've had two cancer diagnoses. And so, not to steal the punchline, but, I went through treatment, was successfully treated for prostate cancer, came out the other side, um, actually ran the New York City Marathon that year, and was back to living life. But by then I had really become an evangelist for routine screenings. I did a public service announcement for the Prostate Cancer Foundation of America, went and got a routine colonoscopy, and you probably know where this is going. Woke up from that colonoscopy and was told that I had a significant mass. That significant mass turned into stage 3B colorectal cancer. I was ushered into a clinical trial, and that meant 27 rounds of radiation and 35 rounds of chemo. Um, I'm happy to say I am right now cancer free. You kind of live a little bit on the edge once this happens to you. Two cancer diagnoses in 14 months certainly changes your life and the way you look at things. And as you intimated in the beginning, my triathlon training mattered a lot as I've traveled this journey.
Yeah, I'm very curious for the listeners. It sounds as if you were are in top physical shape. However, you had cancer in where you were blindsided by it. I'm going to believe. Was it blood tests that the increase in PSA that, for one, maybe you could have known that, or did this happen and no way of knowing it?
Yeah, so in neither event did I have any symptoms whatsoever. I go for routine checkups because, in endurance sports, you put your body through a lot. So you go for regular checkups. And quite frankly, I was more worried about cardiac issues because, when you reach a certain age and you're out there for 15 hours doing strenuous exercise, you want to make sure you're in the shape where you should be doing that. So, yeah, routine PSA picked up my prostate cancer. It was just over the limit. The limit is 4. I was at 4.2. Both my doctor and I figured this is not a big deal, probably fine. But in both cases, it absolutely was not fine. One of the real important distinctions, and I listened for years as people told the story of Jim Fixx. And Jim Fixx was a marathon runner who died of a heart attack. And people always kind of say, yeah, why run? Because, things happen to even people that run marathons. And one of the things that I figured out very quickly is that health and fitness are two very different things. You can be the fittest person in the world and still have a health complication that comes out of nowhere that you never expected. The difference, though, is, as I went through both cancers, the first time I healed a lot faster than somebody else would have, and I was back out, immediately after I had surgery for prostate cancer, I walked almost 2 miles around the nursing station because I wanted to get back out there and get exercising. I walked more than 300 miles in the month after in order to rebuild my strength and stamina. When I was diagnosed the second time with a different cancer, the colorectal cancer, I mentioned a clinical trial. I got into that clinical trial because I'm in good physical shape. And so the essence of the trial is I got 3 chemo drugs instead of the standard, which is 2. And my doctors looked at me and said, we think you can manage it physically and emotionally. And so we're going to put you into this clinical trial and give you exceedingly high doses of chemotherapy in hopes of knocking this thing out. And thankfully, that seems to have worked. But, my fitness was essentially money in the bank. And that's what I say to people. You can still have a health complication, but if you're in reasonably good shape, that becomes money in the bank for, eventually look, none of us are getting out of here alive, and eventually something's going to get you. And so you want to be in the best physical shape to be able to fight back when that time comes.
I think it's very important for our listeners to know. I'm going to just repeat what you said, that health and fitness are not necessarily correlated. You were in great physical fitness, but yet you had a polyp that had gone undetected, that kind of thing. I'm only curious, had you been routine in getting annual colonoscopies?
Yeah, I had had one. So they're not recommended annually. They're recommended every 3 years. And yes, I had been just 3 years earlier, and I'm on a 3-year schedule because I had had polyps the last time around. And so I was thankfully very religious about that and went regularly. Same thing with my physicals and the PSA. Had I not gone, the outcome here likely would have been very different. And so depending upon your age for colonoscopies, you're on a 3-year, a 5-year, or a 10-year life cycle. When I've got folks in my life who say, yeah, I've been putting off my colonoscopy, I don't want to go, it's inconvenient, it's uncomfortable, it's yucky. Look, there was a point where in 6 months I went to 88 medical appointments, and I say to them, you want to see inconvenient and yucky and distressing? Come walk with me for a little while. And so, I am pretty rough on my friends who say I'm putting off my colonoscopy because if I had, I probably wouldn't be here talking to you today.
No, that's great. And so did I certainly want to get into more so the your physical fitness, how you recovered from, but did you have a family history of colonoscopy of colon cancers at all?
No, none whatsoever. And I actually went through genetic screening because I have children and wanted to know if there was a broken DNA bracket somewhere that I needed to know about. No, and the genetic testing showed nothing. I have no significant occupational exposures or environmental exposures that I'm aware of. Wasn't it 9/11, that kind of thing. And so, at the end of it, I said to my doctors, how do you get 2 cancers in 14 months? And my oncologist shrugged his shoulders and said, sometimes it's just bad luck. And
Wow.
so, not exactly emotionally satisfying, but I think probably, a better outcome than knowing that I had some genetic anomaly that I never knew about that I was going to pass on to my kids. And so, that's certainly 2 cancers in 14 months is bad luck, but I've had the best possible outcome. And, one of the things when you get a cancer diagnosis, especially like the second one, is people who are newly diagnosed come to you and talk to you. And I've lost um, 2 other friends who were diagnosed at about the same time I was that had exactly the same diagnosis. I've got another friend who was diagnosed about a year after me who recently had a reoccurrence. And I'll tell you, each and every one of those instances serves you a healthy dose of gratitude that this is the outcome because it's not the outcome for everybody.
Now, what I'm taking from what you're saying is, okay, I have, well, the cancer is what it is, where, it just happened. You're one of the unlucky 1 in 10 million, whatever the situation might be. But your physical fitness, your mindset, and so forth seems, yep, this is going to be a speedy recovery, and you will have no lasting adverse effects from chemotherapy. I don't know that I'm characterizing exactly what your life is, but can you talk to us about whatever the mindset is, the attitude that hey, I'm going to recover from, I'm going to beat this. I will be in I am in good physical fitness. That is definitely correlated to a speedier recovery. If I'm saying something that's not accurate, certainly correct me.
Yeah, so I think that's largely accurate. One of the things that I would say is that, look, the cancer experience is different for everybody. I meet a lot of folks who say, well, I didn't have chemo, so it's different. And look, everybody's cancer experience is unique, and valid. Um, for me, one of the lasting effects, when doctors kind of clear you from this, they use very guarded language. And so they don't talk about remission anymore. They don't talk about the fact that you're cured. They say there's no evidence of disease right now. And, one of the things I've said to my doctors is, look, there's plenty of evidence, right? So, I have some recurring side effects related to chemo. You can't pump yourself full of a toxic substance and expect that there aren't going to be some ramifications. But the other thing that sticks with you really is I go for scans every 3 or 4 months. Now it's 4 months, but it was 3 months. And it's almost like you're on it's like you're on a merry-go-round, right? Or you're spinning a roulette wheel and you land on black and you've got another 3 months of peace, quiet, and gratitude that you're still kicking. You land on red and you're right back to IV poles and hospital gowns and that kind of thing. And so those things kind of stick with you and they never disappear. But there's also some good stuff there too, right? So there's, the gratitude, the thankfulness, the relationships I've built over time, the introspection I've done. Um, for people who pass away suddenly, they don't have the opportunity to do that kind of introspection. So I've been given the opportunity on 2 occasions to do some of that introspection, to go on and write a book about it and that kind of thing. As far as the mindset, it's more complicated than you outlined, but also a little bit less complicated than you outlined. For those of us who get the diagnosis, I guess you have a choice. You could just say, I'm going to forego treatment and let cancer do what it's going to do. And we know what cancer does, it kills you. So for me, I'm like, I don't really have a choice. This is what I've been dealt. I've got to, get through it. And you power through it. I always wrestled with the term cancer warrior because there were days when I felt like a warrior and I was powering through and I was doing this thing. There's other days where, quite frankly, I felt like I had wandered onto a battlefield looking for a restroom and got thrown into this war that I never signed up for. And there were other times as I sat in the infusion room getting chemo over the course of, 6 hours where I'm like, how am I a warrior? I'm just sitting here in a chair. The chemo's doing all the work. But I will say some of the things that helped me in a real kind of way was I exercised through chemo, not to the extent that I was, but I continued to exercise. All the data says that helps the chemo actually work better. But the mindset for me was critical. It was almost like, I'm not going to let this hold me back. I'm going to power through. I've got this. Certainly hoping for the best and doing everything I can to optimize my health. If I don't have a good outcome here, that's not something I can control, but I can control the way I think about this, the way I process it. I was also very, very in tune with the notion that additional stress and worry is not a friend to your immune system, right? Stress and worry doesn't cause cancer per se, but it doesn't help your immune system. And if I'm looking to make sure that all of my reserves are focused on pushing cancer back out of me, I can't spend my life worrying and agonizing and replaying it in my mind. I've got to continue to move forward. So, I continued to work. I run a large not-for-profit organization in my day life. I continued to work out. I rebuilt a lot of my relationships or strengthened those relationships so that I had a support system around me. And, it was almost like preparing for race day. I did everything I needed to do in order to have the best possible outcome.
I think, and what I'm reading from your mindset, which I think is very important, that there are obviously some things you do not have control over, but yet a mindset, I think largely we do have control over that. You don't have control over your total energy, and I'm supposing what I'm saying to you right now.
Yeah.
But so you necessarily can't run the Ironman marathons and so forth, but you can do something in the house. You can do, well, you have the choice of whether you sit on the couch and, you worry and your negative thinking and so forth. And it sounds to me like pretty obviously you're saying that, nope, not going to do that, but I will do whatever I can. I don't know whether it's on the treadmill, you're going to do something. And, but here again, what I'm reading into you is your mindset is, hey, I'm gonna think on the positive, and I'm gonna take whatever I can of the positive from this, and somehow, some way, we're gonna end up on the positive side of this. Doctor, I don't want to assume that what I'm saying is entirely accurate, but that's what I'm reading into what you're saying.
Yeah, I think you got it. One of the ways that I think about this, there's always that persistent fear that the cancer is going to come back and that they'll tell me, hey, look, there's nothing we can do. And I've walked through those scenarios, a million times in my mind. And it's almost like, I envision kind of running alongside cancer and we spend some time together and cancer threatens to come back. And I say, all right, well, then I'll go back to my doctors and we'll restart treatment. And if that doesn't work, then we'll try something else. And if that doesn't work and they tell me you've got X amount of time, I will thank them very much and then triple that time that I have available left on Earth. And so I liken it to, I run alongside those fears and, we'll chat a little bit and then I just pull ahead and I leave those fears behind because I'm not going in that direction. I'm moving forward. And so, you can't stop something that could be inevitable, but you can choose how you view it and whether or not it governs your life. And so, I got back to racing to a certain extent last year. I did a 70.3 mile triathlon. I ran up the all 1,579 steps of the Empire State Building as part of a cancer fundraiser. And so I'm back to doing what I do best. I will say kind of the rebuilding was pretty meaningful for me. When I started out, right after treatment, obviously I wasn't, exercising for a couple hours a day. I was on the Peloton for a half hour, that kind of thing. But as I got back into serious training, I really had to wrestle with, I'm not going out and running 10, 12 miles now and then coming home and going to a family function. I'm, maybe getting 3 to 4 miles instead. And, I'm not going all out fast and I'm bargaining with myself that, I'll run to the next fire hydrant and then walk for a little bit. And then I'll pick up and run again to the next stop sign. And then I'll walk to the next parked car. And, I needed to really start from scratch, which was certainly humbling, but also really just part of the process in terms of how you rebuild your life after a significant illness.
I want to take a very brief moment to tell you about myself, the Cooper Culture, a certified veteran-owned small business. I am a retired lieutenant colonel serving the Air Force for 22 years as an F-4 pilot, commander. I have 300 combat missions. I specialize in executive leadership training, team building, and workplace culture, where we help businesses to develop a culture of loyalty, trust, and by developing personality traits and personal strengths, we can help identify those traits that support the company's objectives. We do this through half-day and all-day training shops. I'm also a public speaker where I welcome the opportunity to speak with your group to help you develop your team to the point where people are loyal and they know exactly how they fit in the organization and contribute to your strategic objectives. Through that, you will have a very profitable company and a psychologically safe space where people know they can freely discuss everything about the company themselves, and we are always working together to progress. Contact me at ron@thecooperculture.com. Our website is thecooperculture.com. Look forward to the opportunity to speak with your group, work with your group, to take your group to the next level to where we soar together. Let's work together. You seem to be saying, I'm going to give 100% to whatever I am capable of doing at this point of my recovery. And you're not going to stop at 30, 40% type thing. You're going to give it 100%. and accept that 100% is what you've got available to you, and it isn't the total distance, total effort that you used to have, but in terms of level of effort, you gave it 100%, and you do have control over that part. You don't have control over what the net result was of the 26 miles, but 100% now at your state of recovery represents 2.2 miles type analogy. That's what I'm trying to drive at. Is that pretty well accurate of your mindset?
Yeah, look, I think we have to accept, I'm always one that wants to push forward a little bit, but the other part of that is we kind of have to accept where we are at any given point in time. The reality is, I'm 59 now, and with 20-year-old kids competing in these races, I'm not going to win anytime soon. I'm also probably not going to come in last. I'm going to come in somewhere in the middle, and I get the same free banana and bottle of water and t-shirt that you can't really wear anywhere else other than a race that everybody else is going to get. But I think I'm more thankful for being out there now. I recall a day when I was in the infusion room, and it faces out onto a sidewalk, and there were clearly staff people who worked in the hospital who during lunch went out for a run instead of eating pizza kind of thing. And I watched them run by, and I sat there and said, oh, what I wouldn't give to be out there running again. Well, now I can do that, right? And so I have a lot more gratitude for the ability to do that. I used to refer to some of my workouts. I have a professional coach, and she would give me workouts, and I'd say to my wife, I have to run 6 miles today, or I have to, bike, 25 miles today. And now it's shifted in that, not that I have to, it's I get to, right? I get to do these things. So often in life, I think people kind of walk around and say, I've got to get my kids to soccer, or I've got to clean the house, or I've got to go do this or do that, or I've got to get to work. The reality is, there's lots of people out there who would kill to have children. There's lots of people who would kill to have a nice house that they had to clean, or a job that they had to report to at 9 a.m. And so one of the things that cancer has brought out for me really is this notion of gratitude, and that there's lots of things that we get to do. And until you've felt the other side or gotten a glimpse into the other side, you never really fully appreciate the gifts that we've been given.
For the listener who may be going through some sort of I'll categorize it as a health valley, emotional valley, some sort of trauma, however they would decide to define that. And they're just at that really low point in their life. They don't know if they have the energy to do exactly what you're describing. Doctor, how would you try to encourage, inspire that person? Come on, get up out of the couch, get up out of that low point, just do something that just move on. You can just at least move out on what you have control over. I'm not sure I'm using the terms you would use, but how would you inspire that person that do whatever you can?
The most important thing, I think, is momentum. The hardest part of any workout, quite frankly, is lacing up your sneakers and getting out the door. Once you get out the door, everything feels great. And so whether we're talking about, exercise, or even in your own life, right? There's people who say, I always wanted to take piano lessons, or I always wanted to learn how to do this. Well, go do it. One of the things that was a wake-up call for me after my second diagnosis. So when I started the book, I wrote it as I was getting chemotherapy, sitting in those infusion rooms, and I finished it on safari in South Africa. Because the other great lesson for me was, all the things in life you always said you were going to do, go do them, because you never know when you're not going to have that opportunity anymore. So, the advice I'd give listeners is, start today. Take some small step to move forward. If you always wanted to get a certain job, if you always wanted to do a particular thing, if you've been thinking about calling that long lost friend, now is the time to do it. And sometimes it's all the thinking about it that takes more energy than actually doing it and getting it done. And so, stop the procrastination. The other thing I'd say is, none of us are good at anything at the outset. There's a lot of science that says it takes a lot of hours to get good at things. And so it's fine to do things that you're not great at. And sometimes that's where you have the most meaningful conversations. And then the last piece of advice I would say, and I use this metaphor a lot, in getting through cancer, it was a long journey for me. A journey where I thought I was done and then I had to start again. And I likened it to mile 18 of a marathon. Mile 18 of a marathon is a very dark and ugly place because you're a couple hours into it, but not close enough to the finish line to say, I'm almost done. And your legs are telling you to stop. Your brain is telling you, you don't need to do this. Nobody is chasing you. You could stop at any time. And finding the strength in that moment to just keep going really could be a metaphor for the rest of life. And so whenever I hit that wall in a marathon, I really just said, I was able to kind of revisit and say, so why am I doing this? Why was this goal important to me? And understanding that being uncomfortable will pass. We live in lives that are engineered for comfortability. We live in, we travel to work in cars with heated seats and cooled seats. And if we want something to eat for lunch, we can hit up an app and some guy will come and deliver it in exchange for a $5 tip. Our lives are so engineered for comfortability. Find a way to create these small minutes of uncomfortability and get used to sitting with it. One of the things I love about that mile 18 of a marathon is it forces you to say, this is uncomfortable. I don't feel great, but if I keep going, this too shall pass. And by the time you hit mile 22 or 23 of a marathon, like this high kicks in where you're like, I'm almost done. I'm actually doing this. I'm actually going to finish this. I can hear the finish line crowd off in the distance. And I made it through this really tough period. I put one foot in front of the other. I thought about the end goal and geez, wouldn't you know it, I'm almost there.
And you wrote about this in a book?
Yeah, so I wrote a book called Every Mile Matters, and it was about how my triathlon experience really helped me get through cancer, but also how cancer changed my perspective about a whole bunch of things. Look, for me, cancer was a race I never signed up for, and it challenges you. It challenges you physically, it challenges you emotionally, it challenges you spiritually because you need to kind of sort through when faced with your mortality what you believe about the end of life, what you believe about a higher power. It challenged my friendships and deepened my friendships, but really prompted a complete reassessment of my life. And look, you don't have to get a cancer diagnosis or some other significant, medical diagnosis in order to take an inventory of your life and really, think through what's important and where you want to be, 30 days from now, 60 days from now, 10 years from now. Cancer did that for me, but you don't need to have cancer in order to do that.
There's the axiom of finish strong, and we'll bring it in for a landing on this, but finish strong. And I'm not implying at all finish life strong, but whatever you're encountering right now, make it through with a positive attitude. I think your book, your personal inspiration of life, finish strong. Don't give up in go back to life and think about well gosh, I just gave up, but finish strong. I think that's what I'm taking from a lot of what you're saying, Jeff. Finish strong, you keep going, and you can win the quote Super Bowl if you just keep going in life. And I don't want to suppose that I'm characterizing what you would say, but that is my take of what you're saying.
Yeah, look, keep going. And sometimes you do that through sheer brute force. Sometimes you do that through persistence. Sometimes you do that with the right people around you and the right support structures. But keep moving forward and figure out how to live the very best life you can. And don't wait till tomorrow.
And keep the right people around you. What a huge inspiration. Marty, what do you think?
Yes, I want to thank you for all the encouragement. No matter what we're going through, like the term you said, okay, cancer's here, this is my friend. We'll work through it together. And also, if you say, I have to do this, I get to do this. That is such a good mindset. So I just thank you for all the encouragement that you have gone through and sharing with everybody. And we will get your book.
Great. My pleasure. Thank you guys so much for having me on. Thank you for what you do, right? So, helping to spread this message and help people improve their lives is in a lot of cases why we're put on this earth. So thank you for doing your part.
Well, thank you, Doctor. You're a great inspiration, and we look forward to continuing this journey along with you.
Awesome. Be well, guys.
Be well.
We appreciate having the opportunity to share our and our guests' life's experiences with you.
The Cooper culture advances organizations to achieve and sustain high retention rates, connected communication, and trust through personality insights and principled leadership. You can contact us at our website, thecooperculture.com, and you can contact us directly at ron@thecooperculture.com or Marty, M-A-R-T-Y, at thecooperculture.com. We work with you to help assess aspects of your culture to advance the environment and people to their best performance. We do that through our staff of certified personal performance coaches, leadership trainers, keynote speakers, and disc personality behavior experts. You can book a speaking engagement directly through our website by contacting us at ron@thecooperculture.com. We look forward to sharing our life experiences with you, some of which are profound, some of which are pretty funny. Some of those life experiences are ones we'll never do that again because we've been through stuff. We truly look forward to working with you, speaking with you, helping advance you in any way that we can.